we'll talk about two things: a great deal and a great conversation.
Right.
They're often going to be the same thing, but at times they're going to be different. You mentioned Vladimir Putin. There is some Zoom level at which you do want to say we're on the same side. You said the human level. It's possible to say, kind of zoom out and say that we're all in this together, not we Slavic people, we Europeans, but we human beings.
We're on the same planet.
Same planet.
Right. Yeah. Several years ago, and his name has evidently been mud now, but he was very nice to me, a lawyer here in town named Tom Girardi, and no shortage of bad reporting on him now. I have absolutely no idea if any of it's true. I do know that in my interaction with him, he was always a gentleman to me and was very generous. When he'd get into conversations with people, he'd always say, like, let's look at 10 years from now, where we could both be in a phenomenal place together. Mm-hmm. Now let's work our way back from there.
That's a good line.
Yeah. And then, I saw him do it in simulations. I was teaching at USC. We were at a function together, and a gentleman at the time told me who he was, and he was really influential. So I walked up to the guy cold, and I said, hey, how about coming and talking to my class at USC? He didn't know me other than the fact that we had a mutual acquaintance, and he graciously consented to come in. And he said, what do you want me to talk about? And I said, look, dude, just from your success here, it doesn't matter what you talk about. Either I'm going to agree or I'm going to disagree or I'm going to learn from it. My students are going to learn from it. So students want to role play with him. They dispute, let's do a negotiation. Every single time he'd go to pick a point in the future where we're both happy 10 years, 20 years from now. And let's work our way back. Now, hostage negotiator, same thing. I call into a bank. Bad guy picks up on the phone. And I'm going to say, I want you to live. I want to see you survive this. Whatever else goes with that. Let's pick a point in the future that we're both good with. And then we work our way back. And people make also, we were talking before about emotion and what you care about. People make their decisions based on their vision of the future. Like without question. I think there's a Hindu temple in the United States has been being assembled the same way that the Hindu temples were in India 1,000 years ago, by hand, volunteers, by hand. These people are knocking themselves out for a place in paradise, a vision of the future. What you will go through today, if the future portends what you want, you'll go through incredible things today. So it's a vision of the future.
So you have to try to paint a vision of the future that the person you're negotiating with will like. Just tough to do.
Let's find out what their vision of the future is, and then remove yourself as a threat.
Sure.
If we can collaborate together at all, if you think that I could do anything at all to help you to that point, and, integrity is my currency, I'm not going to lie to you, which gets back before that I lied to you about whether or not I'm on your side. Right now, not at the moment, we're on opposite sides of the fence. Mm-hmm. That's not going to stop us from being together in the future. Inside, you're going to say, oh, well, you didn't lie to me about today. Maybe you won't lie to me about tomorrow.
So going back to world leaders, for example, whether it's Vladimir Zelensky or Vladimir Putin, you don't think it closes off their mind to show that you have a different opinion?
Depending upon when you showed it. Are you arguing from the beginning, or are you displaying understanding from the beginning? I don't think it stops you from being adversarial. That was the thing about Mnookin's the chapter in his book, the tension between empathy and assertiveness. Mm-hmm. I remember reading that name of the chapter, thinking like, in my business there is no tension. And then I got into it, and I thought, this is a red herring. He's drawing people in because his entire chapter is that empathy puts you in a position to assert, and that there is no tension. It's a sequencing issue. And that's why, again, I think it was written for lawyers.
Yeah. sequencing issue. So timing is everything. So you emphasize the importance of, in terms of sequencing and priority, of listening, of truly listening to
Right.
the other person.
I'm sorry, what'd you say? That was a bad joke.
I
Sorry.
forgot. Your timing is just perfect. How do you listen? How do you truly listen to another human being? How do you notice them? How do you really hear them?
I always hated the term active listening. If anything, it's proactive.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you start to try to anticipate where somebody's going, you're dialed in more. Because along the way, either you're congratulating yourself for being right, or when suddenly they say something that surprises you, you really notice it. Like, that's not what I expected. You're dialed in, you're listening. So it's proactive. And then one of the reasons, we named the book Tactical Empathy. Name the book, Never Split the Difference, but we're talking about tactical empathy. Calibrated emotional intelligence. What's it calibrated by? First, it was experience as hostage negotiators, and we've come to find out that our experience as hostage negotiators is backed up by neuroscience. Another reason why I listen to Andrew Huberman's podcast all the time. Heavy on the neuroscience.
Mm-hmm.
And so then emotional intelligence calibrated by what we know about neuroscience. What do we know about neuroscience? And I'll talk about it from a layman's perspective, and to even say we is an arrogant thing, human beings. I didn't do the research. I'm scooping up as much of it as I can as a layman. The brain's largely negative. I think there's ample evidence. People would argue with you as to what the wiring is and what does what, and the limbic system and all of that. But the brain is basically 75% negative. As a layman, I make that contention. Number one. Number two, the best way to deactivate negativity is by calling it out. And I could say, look, I don't want you to be offended by what I'm getting ready to say. That's a denial. Your guard is up. You're getting ready to get mad. If I say, what I'm getting ready to say is probably going to offend you. Now you relax a little bit and you go, all right, what is it? And then I say it, whatever it is, and you're going to be like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Because we knew from hostage negotiation, by calling out the negativity, deactivate it. And then a number of neuroscience experiments have been done right and left by calling out negativity, deactivating the negativity.
Calling out ahead of time. So like acknowledging that this is ahead of time, that this is going to hurt.
The experiments that I've seen have been when the negativity was inflicted, and then having the person that it was being inflicted upon simply identify it.
Just identify.
Yeah, what are you feeling? I'm angry. And the anger goes away.
It's tough because I've had a few, and again, we're dancing between things, but I've had a few conversations where anger arose in the guest I spoke with.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure identifying it. That's like leaning into it and going into the depths, because that's going to the depths of some emotional, psychological thing they're going through that I'm not sure I want to explore that iceberg with a little ship we got. You have to decide, do you want to avoid it or do you want to lean into it? It's a tough choice.
It's the elephant in the room.
It is an elephant in the room. It is an elephant, especially when I think that's the big difference between conversations and negotiations. Negotiation ultimately is looking for closure and resolution. I think general conversations like this is more exploring. There's not necessarily a goal. Like if I had to put a goal for this conversation, there's no real goal. It's curiously exploring ideas. So that gives you freedom to not call out the elephant for a time. You could be like, all right, let's go to the next room, get a snack, and come back to the elephant.
Right. All right. So I'd make a tiny adjustment on the negotiation definition.
Sure.
Because you said, I think, seeking closure. You used two words, and closure was one of them.
Goals, maybe another. Well, yeah. What is negotiation?
Well, I would say seeking collaboration. And because closure kind of puts a little bit of a finality to it. And the real problem in any negotiation is always implementation. It's why we say yes is nothing without how. And yes, at its very best, is only a temporary aspiration. It's aspirational. It's usually counterfeit. So if you're looking for, huh?
That's a good line. Yes is usually counterfeit. It's aspirational, without the how.
Yeah,
It's just a good line. Yeah.
thank you. I've been working on it. I was practicing. In front of the mirror before I came
Doing
in
pretty
today.
good. You got a bright future ahead of you. You should write a book or something, right?
Yeah.
Your book is excellent, by the way.
Thanks. Appreciate that. What am I doing here anyway?
This on
Yeah.
Earth in general?
On you, with you.
I don't know. We're collaborating.
Why me though? Why'd you want to talk to me?
I've heard you speak in a few places. I was like, this is a fascinating human. I think on Clubhouse and different places, and then
All right.
I listened to some YouTube stuff, and this is just you meet people that are interesting. That's what I love doing with this podcast, is just exploring the mind of an interesting person. You notice people sometimes. Sometimes there's like a homeless person that's outside of 7-Eleven. I notice, who are you?
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It doesn't, like, I don't look at the resumes and the credentials and stuff like that. It's just being able to notice a person.